Hello everyone, Reza here. Welcome to another how-to video. In this one, we are going to focus on the camera sequencer tool, a great tool to lay out and manage your camera shots. So let's get started. Now let's talk about the scene. I've got a very simple scene. There is a character that is the subject. That's the character that I want to focus on. And this character basically walks across the street. And what I would like to do is just to capture this walk in different camera angle and kind of using different cameras and kind of have my own edit. So the character, as you can see, if I zoom in a little bit, the character is kind of late for work. So he is sort of looking at his own watch and like, oh my god, I'm late for work, kind of walking around, and we want to kind of capture that act. With the camera sequencer, it really cuts down the job where you can actually do this edit within Maya user interface. On a normal day, you need to Playblast each shot separately, bring them into Premiere or After Effects and line up your shots to get some sort of a rough cut. But with the camera sequencer inside Maya, you can just do that and send that to the editorial and get a permission to change stuff, so on and so forth. Makes it a lot easier to interact with the client as well if you're under time pressure, or if even cases where you do not have editing software packages installed on your computer. First things first, I would like to make the layout easier for me to access the tool since I'm recording on a single monitor. To do that, I'm going to go to Panel, I'm going to go to Layout, and I'm going to go to 3-pane split top. So it gives me 3 viewports, one current viewport, another perspective viewport, and this viewport, which I would like to turn into a camera sequencer window. That's easy. I'm going to go to Panel, I'm going to go to Panel, and the first item is camera sequencer. And there I have it. This is the camera sequencer tool. You can choose which window will remain as your working camera and which one you link to your camera sequencer. But so far we have no shots, nothing on this window, so it really doesn't matter. So what I actually prefer is to always work with this window as my working window. I need to reference my environment, so I'm not going to select anything by accident. Now I'm going to go and, for example, enable some of these viewport buttons to get a clear image. And I would like to use this as my through the camera lens sort of camera when I work with camera sequencer. Now, so far I have no shots. Let's create a camera first, position it carefully, and then get a shot out of that. I'm going to go to Create, I'm going to go to Camera, and then to Camera. Now I'm going to name this camera Shot 1 Cam. I always name stuff accordingly. I'm going to go to Perspective and pick Camera 1. Obviously, choose something like that. Maybe I'm going to enable the resolution gate as well. Get a good framing, and probably that gets the job done. Maybe I have something like credits or what movie that is or who's acting in it if it's a production. So I'm using this little thing as an excuse to have more information in the scene. Let's play and see what we get. Yeah, that's enough. That's enough information. We actually have that character coming into the shot. So that's a really good shot. Now let's see how we can translate that and how we can bring that into our camera sequencer as a shot, as a layer. The way that Maya sees these shots and the length of these shots is not through your timeline, but also through your playback speed. I can drag the tail of it and say, all right, with this camera, I just want to picture the first 30 frames. You can also punch the number in 30, but I'm more comfortable with dragging this bar. Now if I create a shot, I'm creating a shot from frame 0 to frame 30 through this lens. Hope it's clear how to create a shot by just clicking on this button. So now I have a shot. It's 31 frame simply because I started from frame 0 and it goes until frame 30. I have a timeline in here, and if I scrub through this timeline, you see basically two things. First, you see how it kind of behaves. I'm going after that shot and there's nothing there. But also you may have noticed when I scrub through the camera sequencer timeline, Maya's timeline also moves, right? Whereas the other way around doesn't work. So if I move this, I'm not going to get this one moving. So this timeline is now linked to the camera sequencer, but not the other way around. And because of that, because we have two timelines, we have two sets of numbers as well. And it's not really that confusing. All you need to remember is the top one shows Maya's timeline, the bottom one shows camera sequencer timeline. So I can actually move this shot and you can see the bottom numbers do change because I'm actually moving it inside the camera sequencer timeline, but Maya's timeline staying the same. Frame 0 to frame 30, that's what we agreed on. That's what the shot is about. I can go anywhere in this camera sequencer and scrub through, and again what I see is Maya's timeline. 0 to frame 30. I can go to frame 1000 within the camera sequencer. Again, what camera sequencer looks at is the top numbers. Frame 0 to frame 30. Very, very simple. You can select it and move it to the position. I usually start with the same set of numbers because I don't really need to move these shots around manually. Everything I have is very well structured within the Maya project. Cool. Now first shot is sorted. Now the cool thing is if I click on this shot and go to its attribute editor, I get few attributes to work with. First things first, you may have a camera that is just in your outliner and you want to associate this shot to a particular camera. So if I click on this, Maya says, well, apart from shot 1 cam, you also have perspective 1 and you also have perspective and you have your orthographic cameras. If you want to link this shot to them, in this case, we don't want to. Just so you know, that's an option. You can actually create your camera first and then link it to any shot that you have. Then we have start and end. Well, we agreed on frame 0 to frame 300, but you can actually change it here. You can say, well, you know what? Frame 0 is not really a thing. We want to start from frame 1. And look what happened. This digit changed to 1. Now what we're looking at is no longer frame 0. It's from frame 1 to 30. Same happens with the end frame. You may want to say, well, extend it to frame 35 actually, and you can see all of a sudden we have a longer shot, goes from frame 1 to 35. And we have sequence start frame and end frame. And this is basically the original frames that you had. You don't need to change any of this. You can scale this, which I don't recommend. I'm not really a fan of randomly scaling the shot. You can go 0.5 and then all of a sudden you squeeze everything into half a time, or you can go as twice as long, right? So it sort of stretches your keyframes or compacts them, but I don't do that. You can have hold at the end or at the beginning or at the end. Sometimes you want to have a little bit of pause at the end. You want to have a little bit of pause at the beginning, and you just put in number of frames you would like to have, and that's going to pause. For example, I can just put 5 in there, and you can see I've got 5 frames as hold. It says H5 holding 5 frames. So if I go into these VCR looking controls and play, that was a very tiny sort of 5-frame pause, and only then it started. That's why in camera sequencer timeline we are starting now from frame 5, because we just gave this shot 5-frame hold. To make it more noticeable, I can even go 50-frame hold, and all of a sudden we have 50-frame hold. Camera sequencer timeline starts at frame 50, but Maya still, what we see in Maya is going to be from frame 1 to 35. So if I play, 2 seconds hold, and we're starting with the whole thing. Very useful, actually. By the way, you can actually link this viewport to your camera sequencer, so you don't need to go to panel and change to the particular camera. You basically see what the camera sequencer shows you. The way that you do that is actually very easy. You go to view, view sequence, time. Now all of a sudden this viewport links to your camera sequencer window. So if I have more cameras, this window automatically switches to all of those cameras. Let's try that. I'm going to actually approach it differently now. I'm going to create my camera first, and I'm going to call this shot 2_cam. Of course, I'm not going to forget about that. And let's change our camera sequencer now. Let's change our playback range now. We are going to start from 36 to 60. That would be my second camera shot. All right, so with that said, let's go create. Now, something really, really interesting happened. The top numbers are correct, from 36 to 60. All good. But why I have this gap now? Why am I starting with 73 all of a sudden? Because this line, the scrub head, was actually on frame 73. Now you have two ways of fixing this. One, which is the easiest way, is just to go and do that. Problem solved. I'm gonna undo. Another thing is to actually select these two. And when you select the two shots, you've got this little gizmo to move two shots at the same time. But you can actually go to edit and say remove shot gaps selected shots. Bam. That does this for you. Obviously, if you're dealing with two shots, it's much easier to just drag and drop one. But if you have too many shots and we've got too many gaps, and you know for a fact that those gaps can be removed without having an impact on the quantity or the quality of your shots, then by all means use that tool instead. Now, I have access to this, but look, it's still connected to my shot 1, right? I did not set my shot 2. So let's go into my working area. And I'm gonna go to shot 2. Let's pick an angle. Let's actually have it like so. Let's say that's what I want to get. So we have from 36 to 60. Let's make sure that the character is actually visible. 36 to 60. Yeah, that's good. That will do. I'm gonna associate this camera to this shot by just switching to shot 2. Now let's have a look from the beginning, and I'm going to focus on this viewport because this viewport is the viewport that we connected to our camera sequencer. So I'm just going to go right at the beginning, click, shot 1, shot 2, 1, 2. Perfect. Let's create the third shot. I'm going to go to create and then cameras and camera. Of course, I'm going to call this shot 3_cam. And let's look through the working area. Here, probably for this one, I may go for a long shot rather. The clipping is not working well, so I'm going to set this one to 100 and add 1 0 to that. By the way, if you kind of didn't know what I just did, I have actually a how-to video on near clip and far clip playing, which is on the pop-up banner on the top. Now I'm going to zoom back, and I'm just going to kind of go and pick more of a wider shot. Now let's say I'm happy with the camera angle. Let's add the shot. Now here's the thing. You may say, Reza, is that okay if we by accident don't start from frame 61 and we forget to do it? Let's say we forget to change the Playblast slider and we just say create shot. Now what happens is it puts the shot in a different layer. You can actually select a layer and move it to the position. You can move it up or you can move it here. You may want to have an overlap if you want, but that is also possible. Now, how long this shot is going to be is up to you. Now, this says that, all right, in Maya's timeline, you have from frame 36 to 60, which is not correct because 36 to 60 goes to shot 3 in here, which is shot cam 2. Now, although the position of this shot is correct, the way that it portrays things is not. Because look what it says. It says I'm going to cover from 36 to 60, but more importantly, 36 to 60, which is the mid-range that we picked, from shot 1. So first things first, we need to fix shot 1, associate the third camera to it. Now we have shot 3 underscore cam associated with the camera that we have, but still we're actually covering from 36 to 60. We've already covered 36 to 60. If you look at those top numerical values, we need to continue, otherwise we're actually repeating a slice of time twice in our timeline. So these are the kind of delicacies that you need to think about. And of course, the button number is correct because it's showing that, all right, we are in frame 60 in camera sequencer timeline moving forward. So all I need to do just to address these two numbers, I'm going to say, because we ended on frame 60 in shot 2 underscore cam, we are going to continue with this. We're going to say frame 61, and I want this to go to maybe 40, 45, 50 frames, so 110, let's say. And I can even move it up, and that's good. Now I know that this is going to work for me, because shot, which I can call this actually shot 1, shot 2, I can call this shot 2, shot 4, I can call this shot 3. So the shot name is identical to camera name. There is no confusion now. So shot 1 covers from 1 to 35, shot 2 covers from 36 to 60, and shot 3 covers from 61 to 110. Perfect. If you sort of use your Alt key, right mouse button, to change the way that you see things, you can always select everything and click on this little button that says frame all, so you can see everything in one go, and that white circle allows you to move everything to left and right. So let's rewind. So shot 1, 2, 3. Perfect. That's how you create your shots and how you place them in the timeline and how you adjust them and associate them with different cameras. Now let's have a look at what else do we have per layer. Now for each layer that you create, you have a few buttons in there. I'm just going to select the third shot and drag this down. What we have is a lock layer. Obviously, if you're happy with this layer, video 1, V1, you can lock it and get a kind of lock icon right at the end of each shot. You have solo button, which mutes all shots except those on this track. So I can click on this, it mutes everything else and keeps whatever is on this track. And then you have mute, which does the opposite. It mutes this very track that I selected. Then we have these two arrows, up arrow and down arrow, which is pretty straightforward. If you select a shot and just go down arrow, it actually moves the selected track down in the view area. And you click on here, it moves it up. So it moves it down, and you select the track and you move it up. Simple as that. So that's the role of these buttons. Let's have a look at some of the editing capabilities that you get in the camera sequencer. Now, camera sequencer allows you to fill the gaps, remove any overlaps, and even trim your shot if need be. We have a few buttons on the top for those particular examples. I'm just going to bring the time slider or the head to the beginning of the camera sequencer. Now, you can actually move forward. I'm going to move forward for 5 frames within the camera sequencer. Now on frame 5, what I can do is to select this shot and say, you know what, it starts from frame 0 to 34 on the camera sequencer and 1 on Maya's timeline. I would like to cut or trim the first 5 frames. For some odd reason, you may not like the beginning of the shot. The shot might be a bit too lengthy. You want to cut it. And that's how you do it. You hover your mouse on this button. It says trim shot before current time, and the current time will be indicated by this red column, the head. So if I click on it, now we start where the time slider head is. I can undo. The opposite also applies. Let's say you want to keep this bit and remove the rest of this shot. Then you click on this second button. It keeps the portion that you have and removes everything after this red bar in here. Or you probably want to just have a cut, like a razor tool in Premiere. You just want to have a cut, separate that piece as a separate shot. In that case, with the shot selected, click on this third button, split shot at current frame. Now what it does, it gives you a separate shot, which you can change the association, move from shot 1, maybe connect it to shot 3, and even nudge it back and forth and change a few things. So if I start, if you look at here, now I'm starting from 3 to 1 to 2 to 3. So that's very, very handy. You can change the flow with the single click of a button. You can also remove overlaps. If I have an overlap, let's say here, let's say I have this and I'm not even seeing it, I'm not aware of it. You can, with a single click, you can remove all the overlaps without changing things much. So you can actually select these timelines. I can even select these 2, but you can select everything, of course. And just say, you can go in here and say, remove shot overlap. And as I said at the beginning of the training, you can remove gaps by selecting these 2 and say, remove any gaps. And if you have gaps in some areas and overlap in another areas, with a single click, you can say, remove any gaps and remove any overlaps. Bam, does it for you. So a lot can be done within this tiny window, which is very functional, especially if you want fast iteration to show to the client, send to the editorial, you know, and get some feedback and implement really quickly. Now I'm going to undo. Now let's say we want to swap shot 2 and shot 3. All you need to do is just to select these 2 and go in here and just say swap shot left. Now we have shot 1 and then shot 3 and then shot 2. So I can rewind and play shot 1, 3, 2. How cool is that? You can bring this back to where it was by clicking on the right hand side button, swap shot right, and it reverts this to where it was. Now I have shot 1, shot 2, shot 3, which is really, really handy. You can play without gaps with this icon here. So let's say I have a gap in here and I don't know about it. So if I go in here, what you're gonna see in here with this button off, Maya is going to put the last frame on hold until you reach shot 3. I'm gonna make this gap more pronounced so you actually feel it more. You're not going to see black area, you're not going to see gray, you're just going to see pause at the end of this shot until we reach shot 3. So I'm just going to bring it to this frame, play, shot 1, 2, pause, to shot 3, which can be annoying, but maybe that's a placeholder for another shot. That's totally possible. But you can also have that gap and just click on this button to play without a gap. So I'm just going to rewind, play, shot 1, shot 2, shot 3. So it completely ignored the gap in here, which is very, very useful. Now I'm going to click on this to remove any gaps, and I'm going to frame it. We also have a button here that enables ripple editing, which if you're an editor, you already know what this does. You click on this button and it enables you to manipulate one shot that has a ripple effect on the other shots. Very, very useful. I'm going to bring it back to 1 so the numbers are going to line up perfectly. So that's a very quick look on what these buttons do. You can find them in edit menu as well. Split shot, remove gap, so on and so forth. Let's have a look at this menu, group node, because there are a lot you can do with this group drop down, and it will benefit you as a previous artist, or if you want to show alternatives to your client. So let's have a look. Now let's say I'm going to click and play. Let's say you have shot 3 and I have shot 3 in here and it's all good and you think this shot is perfect, but you may say, all right, I've got a very picky producer that may suggest a long shot from the other side of the street. You may want to have that as an alternative. So what you can do is to go into, let's say, cameras, and create a brand new camera, and you can just name that shot, not 4 but 3 alt as an alternative, and bring that in as an alternative to this shot. I'm just going to move this time slider, camera sequence time slider, to frame 61 and just click. Now it drops it in. I can extend this shot from frame 61 to 110. So I'm just going to go 61, 210. So these shots are identical. I'm still, this shot's still linked to shot 3. I'm just going to switch to alternative. Now let's go and change alternative. So let's say maybe this angle is the angle that we want. You may want to have that just in case the client asked you or the producer asked you to. I'm just going to turn off the light, and you just want to have that. If the client says, well, it would be nice to have the shot in the other way around, you can say, well, I have it right now. Now what you can do is to group these two. You select these two and you go to group and you create a group. Now what you have is still, if I click on this window to look at my time slider, let's rewind and play shot 1, shot 2, shot 3. So it's still going to shot 3, but now what you have is underneath shot 3, I can just click on this, you have this sequence that has been muted and you can bring it to life. You can swap this in just a matter of seconds and say, well, you know what, instead of that, you may want to look at the alternative. Now to change from shot 3 to shot alternative, all you need to do is to select the group node, and then you go to group and go set active shot. What's in the group? Currently shot 3 is selected. You can switch to shot 5 and done. So now if I rewind and play, shot 1, shot 2, and the alternative will be played. You can have as many shots as you want in one group node and just toggle between the shots that you want to be displayed as the active version on that group. So it's a great way of having many alternatives that you already kind of have in place and well thought about. So if the client asks you to, you may respond to by saying, all right, actually I have the alternative right here, what do you think? And you go and select the active viewport to another alternative, and that's it. Very, very useful. And again, this little icon here allows you to collapse it and open it, as simple as that. So that's how you use groups. That's how you benefit from it. It allows you to have some alternatives available in your back pocket in case if someone asks you to. Now let's have a look at how we can Playblast stuff, because at the end of the day you have this, you would like to get an edit out of Maya, probably onto Shotgun or other platforms to just share it with the client or your producer. So let's have a look at that. Now playblasting, it's very, very easy. You can playblast a single shot and go playblast selected shots. You can go and select all of them and go playblast all shots, and you go in there and you select your codec, QuickTime, AVI or image, and you export it. You give it a directory if you want to, and everything else is very similar to the way that you playblast things. And that's how you playblast individual shots. Now what I suggest is to actually turn these cameras into one camera. There is a way that you merge the flow that you have, select all of these cameras. Well, in that case I'm just going to go to ungroup and ungroup it, and for now I'm going to disable this track. So we have 3 shots and 3 cameras connected and associated to those 3 scenes. I'm going to select all 3. Instead of playblasting one video, what I can do, which is totally an alternative, is to go to create and create an Uber camera. Now that camera is going to record what the position is for all 3 cameras that I have in the scene, and it creates a camera based on those, which is so cool. If I click on it, all of a sudden I have a camera called Uber camera. Near clip and far clip has been keyframed, as well as rotation and translation, because these are the attributes that I changed in those cameras. Now if I go to my working camera, go to perspective and choose Uber cam, I have camera 1, I have camera 2, and I have camera 3. How cool is that? So this bakes those cameras that you have selected. In this case I had camera 1, camera 2, and camera 3 alternative. It baked these 3 cameras into one camera. You can even go ahead now into Windows and playblast your Uber cam as a video. So that is another alternative. I love Ubercam and it makes the job a lot easier. The only thing with Ubercam is if you planning on changing your cameras a lot, then probably don't rely on Ubercam. Just go into Playblast and playblast all of your shots, because Ubercam bakes the translation of your existing cameras. And of course, if you find yourself in a situation that you think, all right, this is good, this is final, I'm going to have one camera and that camera is going to switch from one place to another place for me, then by all means bake them into one Uber camera and you can just Playblast that Uber camera. That's it for camera sequencer. Of course, I can just spend hours talking about extra bits and pieces, but that's hopefully that's going to give you a really solid overview of main key features and capabilities, and now you can see how useful this tool can be. Hope you found this video useful and hope you use this tool in your project. Let me know how you go in the description below. This scene, as usual, is available on my Patreon page, so feel free to drop by and download it so you could follow along. Thank you very much. Talk to you guys soon.